Well, 1920s and New York was a very interesting time. In particular, it was a wonderful place of jazz, art, um, innovation. You had wealth like never before in the country, especially in New York. I don't know if you all know this or not, but New York is actually considered the financial capital of America, whereas our governmental capital of America is in Washington, D.C. Just a quick fact. Anyway, but something else was at the undercurrent of our country that a lot of people don't talk about. It is religious freedoms. Religious freedoms. During the 1920s in America, all over the country, we saw more people openly embracing other ideas and nuances when it comes to faith, belief, existence, humanity's existence. What is the purpose of the soul? What defines a soul? We were seeing a surge in, of course, the field of psychology, but it was a very distinct time in our country for religion in particular. And New York kind of was a place that allowed that kind of freedom to flourish during the Gilded Age and before the Roaring Twenties. The wealthy and the elite were known to have their own psychics or channelers, people who used to channel spirits for them to get information before they made investments, before they started a company, before they took a voyage back, to Europe. They would see certain spiritualists. I'll just refer to them as spiritualists because their thinking was so diverse. It was very unique and distinct. And so I want to introduce you to a couple characters leading up to the main person and why I'm mentioning this person. Okay. So the first person I would like to speak with you about, his name is Levi Dowling. Levi Dowling. Pretty interesting fella. At a high level, I can tell you that he is the author of the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ. I put the image up there on the screen so you guys can see it. Now, the reason why I wanted you to learn a little bit about Levi Dowling is because the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ is still being used till this day by not only spiritualists but also Christians. The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ is said to be or believed to be the time frame between when Christ was in the temple and they left and then he came back. So this is supposed to be the period of time before. I'm thinking like 7 years old all the way to 30 years old. From 7 to 30. This is the span of Christ's life that this man says that he has access to, revelation to, and he was told about. Now, Levi Dowling's writings, for a lot of Christians, they do adhere to him and they believe them because some parts of it do align with scriptural text. That doesn't necessarily mean what he's saying is true. Just keep that in mind. But there's a lot of verbiage within Levi Dowling's writings that indicate that he too was a spiritualist. He started out as a very staunch Christian, rigid Christian, and then over time, when you read his work and you see the spans of his life in research, you can tell a lot changed with Levi Dowling, and by the end, he was no longer a Christian. Okay. He started out Christian, he went somewhere else in the spirit realm. But Levi Dowling's work is pretty much the foundational information and strategy that a lot of spiritualists adhere to, meaning get up, go somewhere else, contact mystics, shamans. They go different places. They go to Egypt, they go to Ethiopia, they go to they go to the Middle East, and they meet with these very high ranking spiritualists of other beliefs to get information, to get techniques, to get power, XYZ 1, 2, 3. So Levi Dowling is very, very, very important. Okay. Levi Dowling's work led to someone else. I'm about to show you him. The person that Dowling influenced, it is Noble. I think his name is Noble Ali. Yes, Noble Drew Ali. That's his name. Noble Drew Ali. I have a lot of names that I'll be going through. Sorry. Okay, so this is him at what he deemed as their convocation. Noble Drew Ali did, in fact, call this occasion at the Moorish Science Temple of America to be their convocation. As you see, they're in, Middle Eastern type garb and attire. The thing is, you need to understand that Levi Dowling teachings is what led and guided Noble Drew Ali. Okay, and you see up here that he refers to himself as a prophet. And so here's a more clear photo of Drew Ali and what he looked like at that time. If you look right there on his shoulder, if you can, you see it. I'm sure you can't see my cursor, excuse me. You'll see up there on his shoulder, it look like a star, very similar to the Order of the Eastern Star. If you look right there on his shoulder, and also if you see the initials under it, but I just wanted you to see that real quick. But anyway, he ended up traveling to Egypt himself, and doing all this research. And he said that he met with, all of these mystics, and one of the mystics told him that he was Christ incarnated, reincarnated, and everything always led to Drew Ali having these fantastical stories about his upbringing, his life, his escapades and all of that. And the thing is, those who tried to prove that he wasn't being honest or find holes in it, a lot of people died actually because of the contention of trying to prove that what he was saying was blasphemy. It wasn't true. He wasn't the Prophet Muhammad. He was not Jesus Christ reincarnated. Something is wrong with him. He's a madman. And unfortunately, he was very young, but he ended up being murdered. But the thing is, his work still lives on to this day. These Moorish science temples, they still exist. When you see people talking about being black Moors and everything, this is who they're talking about. This is who they follow, and who he follows and get his information from. It is this guy, Levi Dowling. I I hope I didn't lose you. Everything he says about all of his adventures and where he went, and the shaman and all of these people he allegedly spoke with and spent time with, all of that comes out of Levi Dowling's book, The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ. The only difference is that Ali said that he actually went to those places and experienced it, XYZ 1, 2, 3. All right. And like I said, unfortunately, he was very young when he was murdered. He said that he was raised by Native Americans. And so when I was doing research on Drew Ali, I realized where that tie-in comes from with Black Moorish Americans saying that they're indigenous people of the land and they're part Native American, and where they get it from, it came from him. And so when you hear their rhetoric and stuff, that's who it's coming from. It's him. So I'm about to introduce you to another character. I just wanted you to see these two for a reason. Please keep in mind that during this time that Sweet Daddy Grace used to be, up there in New York quite frequently during the same time period. His membership and congregation in New York grew exponentially. I mean, it was like a wildfire during that time. And so he gained a lot of popularity in the streets, as far as people in his churches. As far as Christian churches, his were some of the largest. It was a lot of competition between him, his followers, and Father Divine's followers and all the offshoots that ended up coming because of it. I just want to make sure I touch on that real quick so you can see that the Black uh, mindset of spirituality, it was evolving, right? You were seeing the very beginning of large masses of Black people adhering to spiritual and religious practices in an unprecedented manner. And it was happening right there in New York. That's the thing that I found so fascinating, that all of this is happening at the same time. And you do have to understand, like, just like in these days, and then as well, whoever has the money, they have the power. And I would like for you to know that people like Drew Ali, Daddy Grace, Father Divine, all of these men were in close proximity to the most wealthy people in the entire world at that time. Not just the most wealthy people in the country at that time, but the most wealthy people in the entire world. We're talking about, this is before the Great Depression. Keep that in mind. So it was money going everywhere. You also, before I forget, the prohibition was during, this is the prohibition era, excuse me. So what that means is that alcohol was prohibited, right? So whoever had the liquor, they also had a lot of money, and they also had a lot of power. They had a lot of connections as well. Just think of Harlem Nights. Oh, the irony, Harlem. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, Harlem Nights. So you had these spiritualists who were also, they used to handle a lot of alcohol. I just put it that way. And that was how some of them, not necessarily Christians, but how a lot of them made their money between alcohol, running numbers, and religious leaders found a way to acquire wealth as well. And they were in very close proximity to leaders, of police departments, politicians, and all of them. And they had a great impact because they had the money. So let's move on. I just want you to kind of know what the world was like during that time. Well, during that time, someone arrived on the soil of America. And this gentleman's name, his name is Neville Goddard. And the thing is, Neville Goddard admits openly that he was heavily influenced by Levi Dowling, a whole lot. Okay. And like everyone else who grabbed a hold to Levi Dowling, Neville Goddard evolved and magnified what Levi Dowling was teaching and indicating in his writings. Now, you can think of it this way. Neville Goddard is the father of manifestation. He is the OG blueprint when it comes to that. No one can argue that. Something interesting was going on as well. Before I forget, Neville Goddard was an American. He wasn't. He was from Barbados. And I want you to keep in mind that all of these spiritual leaders, they were traveling all over the world during that time, which is very, very interesting. There wasn't any airplanes. They're getting on, vessels on the water, ships, and they're going everywhere. I'm talking about Ethiopia, they're going to Egypt, they're going to England, they're going to Ireland. And so this is really, that tells you the kind of money they were playing in. But anyway, Neville Goddard, you can catch some of his recordings on YouTube, but he believed in the power of manifestation, envisioning what you want. And really, he has said, excuse me, in some of his writings, that the imagination is God, the ability for people to imagine themselves having things, doing things, being in a new house, or buying a new car, or the career they want, or the love they want. They can manifest these things by thinking them, right? So that's a baseline, broad understanding of Neville Goddard. And during that time, something interesting happened. There's an image of a book on the screen. that I was able to grab. But I want you to know something. He had a mentor, and his name was Abdullah. Now, there are different descriptions of how he looked. However, there isn't any that I know of actual images of Abdullah. People say his skin was dark as soot. He was very dark. He was from Ethiopia. He was a mystic and everything, right? Here's another depiction of him that I want you to take a look at. This is another depiction of him. I think that this particular one was done by AI. But with Abdullah, the mystic, the Ethiopian mystic, that's what he was always referred to as. That he was a Jewish Ethiopian mystic. There is a form of Jewish mysticism that does exist, but the way it's carried out uh it's rigid. It's very intense to research it, but I'll show it to you one day if you would like to see, or you can look it up. Jewish mysticism is old, is ancient, and it's in the Bible too. It mentions it, so you can research that at your leisure. But anyway, let's talk about Abdullah for a little bit. Now, it is said that Neville Goddard would have these very secret parties, right? And at these parties, certain people would were only allowed to have access to see or speak with Abdullah at these parties. And it never failed. It was always the most wealthy people in the entire world had an opportunity to go to this house. And that house is still in New York to this day, to go to this place, and they have these secret parties, and they had a chance to speak with this mystic. And of course, you know what they want information about. Everything they want answers about the same stuff that everybody want. Poor, rich, in between, life, health, money, it's the same baseline human desires to know if it would be well. And the reason why I bring up Abdullah is for a reason. It is my belief that Abdullah wasn't a physical form person. I don't believe that. I believe that Abdullah was someone that Neville Goddard channeled. That's what I believe. I believe that certain Christians in the church, when you start hearing them mention things about zodiac signs, you're hearing them talking about Pisces this, Aquarius this. We're in the age of Aquarius, because actually Levi Dowling was talking about and teaching about the age of Aquarius and the different houses of the sun, the different, and all of these different things dealing with constellations and all of this. That's what he got down with, right? So I just want to show you that real quick so you can remember it, keep going back to him. And he was, big into astrology and all of that. The age of Aquarius, we're leaving out of that. We're coming into this. We're going into that. So when you start hearing Christians use this verbiage, understand they have had access to either these books or people who have been students that span generations to this kind of stuff. Now, I can also tell you another person who were a student of Neville Goddard's work. It was Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike acknowledges that this is who he get his stuff from. He acknowledges Neville Goddard, right? And the thing is, you're not going to be a white man from Barbados, and I don't believe that's how Neville Goddard looked either. I do believe that because there's a lot of concealment going on. They want the publications, the works, the writings, and the teaching to continue to spread. Excuse me. but they never there's an art to concealment there, and it is deliberate. It is deliberate, so you don't know what they look like, right? And I guess that's probably one of the tests too, to see if you actually saw or heard who you think you saw and heard, if you're in one of these practices or ceremonies or something is going on. I just put it that way. Because there is no way this man from Barbados, this white man from Barbados, walking around with a small uh Ethiopian mystic with a turban on his head. They said he wore a turban at all times. He's not going to be walking around with this little foreign man and no one notices. It doesn't, the math isn't mathing, right? Anyway, let's get to the meat of it. So Reverend Ike acknowledges this is his guy, short language. This is his guy, and this is who teaching is the meat and potatoes he get his name it claim it from. And I need you to understand that same name it claim it ended up mainstream in the black church, but it also generated a lot of money for the black church, because what they were doing, they were practicing the practice of manifestation that Neville Goddard was the father of, and they didn't even realize it. Depending on the preacher, they would choose a different scriptural text as the foundation. However, it was the same methodology of name it, claim it. If you see it in your mind's eye, you can bring it to pass, right? And that's what it rests on. But as you know, this is what Reverend Knight believed and got into. And short answer is that the people who really studied this guy, not Neville Goddard, but really studied this guy, Levi Dowling, and I'm talking about really get into it and understand, or take yourself on a journey to understand zodiac signs, to understand the different houses and eras, ages, that humanity's supposed to be living in, and how it impacts your consciousness, how it impacts your intuition, how it impacts your prayer life, and all of that. Because Levi Dowling brought in such a strong presence of the esoteric into Christianity and the belief itself, that those who I would consider still dealing with extremely wealthy people and able to give them services as far as teaching them or providing them information, it's a form of manipulation. If you sit down and read it, they just use different variables, maybe zodiac signs, stones, rocks, the month, whatever, but it's still an art, a masterful art of manipulation. Never Guarded's greatest manipulation, it was Abdullah. So now you have all these people running around and think they've seen him and all. No, it was someone Neville Goddard was channeling. And I do believe Neville Goddard learned certain closed uh, West African practices. I believe that he was aware of to a certain extent because of where he was coming from, as far as the Barbados, and he knew certain things. He knew how to do certain things. And those practices have been passed on. It went from Goddard, it went to Ike, and it just keep going. It just keep going, going, going. So the leaders you don't know who are talking to people, you need to know. If you can open up one of Neville Goddard's books, or you can open up anything from Levi Dowling, you can read anything from Ali, you can read anything from Grace, and they all point back to esoteric beliefs. You need to understand that's something they had access to and they were dabbling in. And the difference now is that the leaders are going to the person who are pretty high ranking. And I can honestly say, I think at this time he may be the highest ranking one in the entire country at this time. And that's why Pastors are going to him. I forgot to tell you too. No, Neville Goddard also tapped into something real interesting. When Goddard showed up, that was the very beginning of radio broadcasts. It was the very first, very beginning of your messages going from within a city or being written and mailed out and hope the people can read. It started being on the airwaves. It was going into people's homes. People were huddling together around radios during this period. And so anything they would hear, they would believe it. They would go with it. So that was another influence Neville Goddard maximized, just like Reverend Ike did, and just like they do on social media now. I'm just saying. I hope you enjoyed this gab, darling. If you have a question, please put it down in there. It's googly gop because I'm not in my office right now. I'm actually sitting in my bed talking to you. So if you have questions, honey, you put them down there in the comments section and let me know and I'll read it. And tomorrow, prayerfully, I will be on the road on my way to the No Kings rally. All right. Can't wait to read your comments. I hope you enjoy it. Bye, y'all.